joining us. And as always, to my right is TFL's managing editor, Andre Smirnov. Say hi,
TFL
Andre.
Truck. Hi, guys.
And of course, senior presenter Nathan Adlin.
Yep. Hi.
And behind us today, we have the new Ford. What is it, Andre?
It's a 2018 Expedition.
Why do we have 2018 Expedition behind
Because
us?
it's part of our news segment, which is coming up soon.
Yeah, so coming up on today's show, we're going to do a whole bunch of fun stuff. We're going to talk about the news, which I think is exciting because that vehicle is going to be featured highly in it. Who knew? Big, honking SUVs are back in a big way. We're going to talk about the news. We're going to do shout-outs. So if you guys have any... if you're watching this live and if you have any input into the show, we want you to be part of it. So definitely come join us. We're going to have a giveaway. We're going to be giving away one of these wonderful hats using the picture of the day. So you're going to have to guess. That's going to be at the very end of the show. And the main part of the show, we're going to be doing buyer beware, boys. The 10 cool cars, used cars, that you should avoid buying and why.
Yeah, but they're cool, but not so cool, right?
They're not that cool.
They're cool.
No,
these are cars that are cool. But
some of them aren't so cool.
They're cool.
No, okay.
These are cool. I specifically want
Are you sure?
and pick cool cars.
Okay,
Yeah. They're
okay.
not like they're not like mid-sized sedans or crossovers.
They're a little surprising, right?
They're cool
They're
cars.
surprising.
Okay.
All right, but before any of that, Andre, let's talk about the news. So that is your neck of the woods.
Yep, news. And number one on the news segment is Land Rover Range Rover. They did a stunt. They did something really incredible. They drove a Range Rover Sport
Up a staircase.
up a staircase which is 45 degrees. This is the Heaven's Gate, also known as Heaven's Gate.
In China.
In China. And this was the PHEV, so their hybrid version. And it was really frightening. We have a clip of this event.
So why do they
Yeah.
do this?
Because there's 999 steps at a 45-degree
Well,
angle.
this was the first car to attempt it, and they succeeded, but it was not a very. Look at the center screen. Do you see the angle? It's 45 degrees.
Wow.
And then this is a rock step, so it's slick.
Yeah.
And if you miss something, and if you roll down the hill,
You die.
it's
Yeah.
Let's
an
watch it.
issue. He's going fast, by the way.
It's like a ski hill.
Pretty much.
Wow.
And it's cloudy. You see there?
Did he fall off the hill?
Keep watching.
Boom!
Bada bing.
So this driver is actually, he has also done Formula Electric driving,
Yeah.
Formula One driving.
Yeah.
And when he got out of the car, he basically said, this is the craziest thing he's ever done.
You know, there are two brands, Andre and Nathan, that have the most off-road cred, of course, and that's Land Rover and Jeep. And I kind of feel like without a Defender, these guys are trying really hard to prove that they still have off-road cred, because a Disco Sport, right,
Yeah.
is not the most
Range Rover Sport.
Range Rover Sport, right, is not the most off-road worthy. I mean, you know, a lot of it is about tires, approach and departure angle, and they're kind of, what they're proving here, what the press release said, which I read this weekend, was that their, you know, terrain management system handled this challenge. And I am old school. You know, you can have all the electronics you want. You can have power being shuffled from, you know, one wheel to the other, hitting the brakes. I'd still rather have two locking, if better yet, three locking diffs, good tires, good ground clearance, and a desert air intake.
It looked like stock tires, by the way.
Desert air intake. Nobody got that.
No, I got it. I was trying to ignore it. You know, if this was covered with snow and he did that, that would be impressive. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm kind of like, but yeah, it's, you know, they're trying to get their street cred back. Well, Andre, what else is happening in the news world?
Well, full-size SUVs, body-on-frame SUVs are back.
Yeah.
And specifically, well, the one behind us is the 2018 Ford Expedition, but it's really popular. So it was just redesigned by Ford, and also as well as Lincoln Navigator was just redesigned. Their sales are up in a big way. 59% increase in January over the previous year for the Expedition, 132% increase for the Navigator over last year. But you have to remember, they were not selling very many last year because it was at the end of their life cycle. The sales were slumping, but now they're big in a big way, and they're investing into factories, Kentucky, Louisville, to build these trucks. And they're saying that they actually froze. You know, employees can get cars.
Yeah, like Ford employees.
Yeah, Ford employees. So if you're a Ford
Like we
person,
can't get cars.
right? A Ford employee can get discount on a vehicle.
Right.
Well, they just closed orders for Expedition and Navigator because they want to sell them to the consumers.
So in fact, we didn't even get this car this truck in our press.
We
room.
haven't tested the Navigator.
Yeah, they have it. They had it at the Chicago Auto Show. We did a video. We kind of did a walk around with the product manager for this vehicle, and she told me something interesting. You know what? How many days on lot do you think this thing is on average? And days on lot basically measures how popular cars are. So if a car isn't popular, it can languish on the lot up to 2 months.
Or many months.
Yeah. How many days on lot?
5 days.
7. Very close. Basically, every single one they build, they sell. And they're expensive. The one that we did the walk around was $105,000. It was a black edition.
Yeah.
It was very luxurious. I don't know how many cows gave up their hides, but it was incredible. And I guess that just foretells the future that SUVs are red hot. Hey, do we have that graph that we can put up there? This is kind of an interesting graph. Our friend Anton put this together. You want to walk us through it?
Yeah, so this is basically showing you, so at the bottom, the number on the left, pickup trucks, how many pickup trucks the big truck makers sell.
That's right here. How many pickup trucks?
And the next column is SUVs, body on frame.
So how many body on frame?
But he did a comparison, a ratio, how many SUVs you sell versus how many trucks. And the average is 25.
Yeah.
So 1 in 4.
So what's interesting about this, for instance, is GM's right kind of in the middle with the average, but Ford, it's only 7% of their big trucks, body on frame, are actually like that.
SUVs.
Yeah, whereas with Toyota, it's the exact opposite. It's 56%. So a lot of people are buying Sequoias,
Forerunners.
Yeah. Maybe the reason there's so much demand is because that number is so out of whack. That 7% is so out of whack with the rest of them.
Yeah, but by next year, I guarantee you that number is going to go up significantly.
Yeah.
I mean, without a doubt.
Well, here's what I see in that segment. GM kind of has it locked down, right? They've
With the
sold
Escalade, the Tahoe, the
Yukon.
Yeah.
I mean, they're selling they have about 70 to 75% of the segment.
Yeah.
So Ford has a big challenge ahead of them because how do you break into that? How do you sell more?
Hey, let's ask for a shout out, Andre. What do you guys think? Do you like these big SUVs? Is that something you would consider buying? I mean, are you buying it because, for instance, it's a better alternative to a minivan? Right? I mean, let's face it. This is a 7-passenger vehicle, 3 rows, and if you've got a big family,
But it does something that the minivan doesn't, right?
which is
It goes off road and it can tow.
Yeah, towing is a big thing. So if you have a big trailer, a big boat, excuse me, the full-size SUV is where you want to be.
yeah.
Yeah, and just real quickly, what makes this different than the competition? Aluminum, 4-wheel independent suspension, twin turbocharged V6. Those are like the main bits of ingredients that make this different than a Suburban, which hasn't changed in a long time.
The question I have is now that they're putting in diesels, right? GM announced that they're doing a straight 6 diesel. Are those going to wind up in these big SUVs as well?
I'm sure of it.
So that's exciting.
Because it'll lower their cafe numbers.
Well, you can say the same thing. Ford is putting a diesel into F-150.
And speaking of cafe numbers, that's our other story, Andre.
Yes. Final news story for today is White House and the NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Association, are considering lowering their MPG standards for 2026. So what the proposal been so far is
under Obama.
Under Obama's administration, the goal was 46.6 MPG average.
It's a fleet average
for fleets by 2026,
that
which
means
is
none of those.
no.
No.
But the proposal is to lower it all the way down to 35.7. So basically take like 11 MPG out of it.
Which is huge because basically that changes the mixture of cars that automakers are building. Because if they don't have to meet those emission standards, right, then they don't have to build the Bolt, they don't have to build the Prius, they can build many more of those.
Yeah, and the alarming number is under Obama's administration, by 2030, that would mean that 61% of all vehicles would be hybrids or electric.
Or electric, yeah.
On the new proposal, it could be 10%. So
You know what it is right now? Less than 1%. We've got a long way to go. Hey, Zach, any shout-outs? Anybody have any thoughts about this? Or Mike, any shout-outs?
Yeah, guys.
Yeah.
So Carson Street wants to know, he's going to buy a Power Wagon soon, Nathan. But
You're the man!
He wants to know if he should be wary of the Power Wagon on the trails for any reason.
Well, it's a really heavy truck. That's the first thing. And bear in mind that with all that weight, with fairly small tires, you can dig in fairly easily. So one of the things you may want to do is make sure that if you're going on a trail that somebody else in a similar truck has done it successfully. It's a really easy way to check it out. Otherwise, you may be getting stuck because it's just such a big, heavy beast.
All right, I'm going to keep this conversation on topic, guys. So tomorrow we're doing actually an Ask Mr. Truck.
There you go.
If you have specific buyer questions about trucks, about configuring, about towing, please save it tomorrow. And Mike, if anybody is asking about the stuff we're actually talking about, we're going to give those shout outs a priority. If you guys have other questions about like power wagons and such, it's not today's show.
Yeah, wait till tomorrow when
Yeah,
you see
wait-
Mr.
yeah,
Truck.
Yeah.
Something relevant.
Yeah.
So, VW Siphone wants to know if you guys think,
Hey,
as fuel prices keep going up, are people going to keep buying big vehicles like this?
VW Siphone, thank you for the shout out.
Yeah, and the answer is yes. I think that, it's supply and demand. People want SUVs right now. People love SUVs, even crossovers. So, yeah, as long as you guys keep buying them, they're going to keep making them, and they're going to make a lot of money off you by doing it.
And this new generation of Expedition, actually, they've improved the fuel efficiency.
Oh,
of it.
yeah, they have.
They subtracted a lot of weight, several hundred pounds worth with aluminum body, new 10-speed automatic,
Right.
twin turbo V6. So they're thinking about fuel economy even in the big truck.
That's right. So as long as if the standards are lowered, yeah, there'll be more trucks. I mean, yeah.
You know, it's funny how short of a memory we have, right? It wasn't that long ago, like 2009, where people were buying big SUVs, big trucks, and then gas prices went through the roof. It's like the stock market, right? Everybody thought you couldn't find the top of it, and then all of a sudden something dramatic happened, like with the fuel prices, and people couldn't run farther or faster away from these. So now we're going back up to that, but at some point, that's going to happen, right? Maybe when gas goes, when you have to double swipe your credit card to fill that bad boy up,
things are going to start coming
They
to
should
a head.
increase that limit.
from 100.
Yeah, please increase the limit to 200. Okay.
Yeah.
That would make me feel better, Andre. Thank you.
Is there anything else, Mikey? Nope. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. So today's most interesting topic that we're talking about are buyer beware, right? We love classic cars and trucks. We love cool classic cars and trucks. And we have some experience in kind of which ones to avoid. And so hopefully we're going to give you some insider information as to what is a good one to buy and what you should run far and fast from. And we're going to do it as our usual top 10 list. So why don't you start, Nathan, and top 10 buyer beware used cars to avoid.
Now, surprisingly, on this list, number 10 is the 2011 to 2013 Honda Civic, the 9th generation. And there were quality issues with this car, which is really surprising for Honda. Had a harsh ride, interior issues, and another company rated the 2012 model to poor.
Yeah, Consumer Reports.
Yeah.
Yeah, Consumer Report. And the crazy thing about this Honda was, I was there. I think we were both there when they introduced the next version of it, the refresh. They actually refresh cars every 4 years. This one, 2 years.
Yes, very quickly.
Very quickly, and they actually apologized. Honda actually apologized. for it.
Begrudgingly apologized.
I mean, obviously there it is. It's like they kind of phoned it in, and everybody called them on it, and they said, "Well, you're right." I don't
That's
know what
rare.
happened. Cost cutting.
I think this is one of those cases where there was too much management and not enough engineering.
Yeah.
But we'll never know for sure because they would never tell us. Fortunately, it's improved. The newer ones are much better.
Now the next one's super interesting. Andre, what's the next one, dude?
It's a Subaru Impreza WRX.
A
but this
WRX,
is,
really?
Yes, but this is a 2008 model. And here it is
Only
in
1
all
year.
its glory.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, the styling, so the engine was still there, right?
Right.
But the styling and it wasn't quite as quick as a competitor, like a Mitsubishi Evo. And the styling wasn't there. I mean, it looked like an economy hatchback, but it was actually a WRX.
Actually, it was like so what they did was they took the WRX and they refreshed it.
Yes.
And the market was going kind of toward, remember this is 2008, remember I said the fuel economy, right?
Yes.
So the market was going toward more powerful, faster, Hellcat-like cars, and they went the exact opposite direction, right? They made it more of just kind of a efficient, it had one exhaust versus dual exhaust. They completely toned it down. And everybody in the Subaru community went like, "Whoa, we're tapping out of this!"
Yes.
And it took them exactly 1 year
To redesign it.
Now this model did stay, though. They did have it, but they called it, I believe, the GT later on. And then they had the WRX, had the fender blisters and everything else. And that was one of their ways of compensating such a mellow design.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it was like, sometimes you just get the wrong car at the wrong time. And sometimes you get the right car at the wrong time. And this may have been the right car, it was just the wrong time.
And there are a couple other issues to think about. First of all, reselling this car, good luck. It does not maintain its value like other Subaru products, which are quite good.
Yeah, and there's an interesting phenomena that happens on Craigslist, because I cruise Craigslist quite a bit or bring a trailer, and there are a lot of cars that are actually very inexpensive, and you think to yourself, this is a hell of a bargain. It's a
Right.
WRX and it's so cheap, but there's a reason it's so cheap, and the 2008
That's one of them.
WRX is one of them. All right, Nathan, what's next?
It is the 2003 to 2010 Porsche Cayenne.
The first gen, right?
The very first
First gen.
generation.
Yeah, they're cheap. You can get those things for almost 10,000 now.
Ooh,
Yeah,
but
and-
there's a reason.
There is indeed. For one thing, the active suspension system is prone to not working.
Every every air suspension eventually fails.
Eventually fails, that's right. And it's extraordinarily expensive to fix or replace.
Yes.
Another thing to consider is the fact that this is the first generation of this vehicle. As such, newer generations have different looks and resell for higher values. Just having standard work done on this vehicle is extraordinarily expensive.
There's a saying, there's nothing more expensive than a cheap Porsche.
Gee.
Because you can buy a very inexpensive Porsche, but the first repair you have to do on it.
Well, actually, it's more than that. This Porsche suspension was integrated into the engine, so the two work as one, which sounds great, which sounds very advanced, until you have to work on the engine. And if you have to work on the engine, in a lot of cases, you have to drop the suspension, which makes, let's say, a $500 repair into a $4,000 repair.
Yes.
Now he's talking about components from the suspension. It's not talking about the whole axles
No,
and everything.
everything. Yeah.
No, not in the back.
Not front.
Yeah, the front suspension.
Yeah, the front you have to drop the suspension and get at the engine, which is not inexpensive at Porsche mechanic prices.
We're going to stay with German cars and go to the next one, Andre.
Number 7, and I think a lot of us have, because in Colorado there's a lot of these.
Yep.
99 through 05 Audi Allroad. This is the first gen Allroad based on the A6 wagon.
I loved
And
that car.
I did too. I saw
I
that.
thought it was the coolest car
It was
in the
the
world.
coolest car, an off-road station
They had a
wagon.
third row seat option too.
Yeah, it
It's
was
an insanely cool car, and one of my
turbocharged engine.
my father's one of his best friends owned one, and what he told me was by the time he was done with this car after about 7 years, he could have bought 2 of them.
Yeah.
It was constantly in the shop. There had many issues. Once again, air suspension
Major
issues,
issue.
turbocharger issues, just issue after issue. And it was a fun car when it was working properly, but when it wasn't working, it was costly.
Yeah, it was one of those cars that you wish they brought over, and then they did, and then you were like,
Ouch.
I wish they hadn't brought it over. And I think it left such a bad taste in people's mouths that the current A6 All-Road, you can't even get, right? They don't bring it over.
Yeah, it's in
They only
Europe.
bring the
Yeah.
A4, which is our All-Road. And it's a shame because it was crazy cool. I actually had a friend of mine who bought one and who decided to take it off-roading up in Montezuma, Colorado, and had a very expensive tow bill because these tires were definitely not off-road rated. And so he punctured the tire sidewall, and he had to have a tow truck actually come up there and get him. So it was one of those cars that was crazy cool, but my God, the engine was crap, the suspension was crap, pretty much everything was poorly designed.
Speaking of crap,
Yeah.
Should
let's
we
go
move
to
on?
the next one.
Is
Yeah.
there a shout out, by the way?
Any
The
shout outs
people-
before we move on? Okay.
people-
So, number 6 is the 1999 to 2004 Land Rover Discovery 2. The reason why I want this one to be up on that screen is because I owned a first edition, not this.
That's a good one. The first edition's a good
Was
one.
good.
Yeah,
It was
good.
solid and relatively easy to fix.
So the Disco 1 and the Disco 2 are like
Completely different. They look similar, but
Yeah.
they're not. No bolts match up. I mean, they are very different products.
But they look alike except for the lights and the tail.
Yeah, this one's a little bit more finished. It's a little bit wider. It's a little bit thicker altogether. It did, when new, it was a pretty decent vehicle. It rode well and it went off road. But progressively down the line, the vehicle was extremely expensive to maintain. One of the things, once again, air suspension. Absolutely terrible air suspension system. If you look at one today, I almost guarantee that it'll have at least one new air suspension system put in there.
Actually, people take them out. They're so
Yeah,
bad.
in some
head
cases they
gaskets,
put-
all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's 3 lights and they're called the 3 Amigos, Nathan.
Yeah.
And the 3 Amigos all fail on the Disco 2s. So one of them is the air suspension.
Yep.
So people pull that out and they put coils in, right?
That's right. Then the
The other Amigo is the check engine light, and that's because it has an aluminum head, and they would overheat.
They would warp.
And they would warp, so your engine was gone. And the third Amigo was the ABS, and you'll inevitably see one of those three lights on. And ABS could be one of two things. It could be like a pump, which is very expensive, or it could be a sensor, which isn't. But you don't know until you get into it.
Right, and then you have to take it to a Land Rover and
isn't
or
cheap.
yeah. The bottom line is that these vehicles are extremely expensive to maintain. They may be cheap to buy, but don't let that fool you. If you have to buy one of these, either buy the first generation or the third generation, where they addressed a lot of these
Agreed.
issues.
And in fact, the Disco 2 was so bad. Whenever they have to get rid of the name for like a long time,
There's
they
something
kill
wrong.
The Disco name.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing that I think you know is that the Disco 1 actually had the running gear from a Defender.
Yes.
So it had the the four-wheel drive system of a Defender. So it was crazy good off-road. This, not so much.
Not so much. All right, let's move on.
Next on the list, yes, it's the Chevy HHR, if you remember it. Here it is. 2006 through 2011, and they have different versions of this vehicle, but it's basically kind of a retro-styled hatchback, which was cool in concept, but in execution was poor. It was just rattly, engine issues. It was just not a very well-built car.
I have a little bit of experience with this car because my brother had one of these, which was assigned to him by his office, and he had to drive around in it.
Ouch.
And yeah, he actually lost weight and started
Really?
getting gaunt. His hair started falling out, and it was just because of this car. He couldn't see out of it when he drove it. Now, I've driven the SS version of it. Now, first of all, guys, yes, the PT Cruiser came out before this, so General Motors copied the PT Cruiser?
Yeah, which in itself was a
Which is
questionable.
just, well, what? But they're hard to see out of. They've had engine issues. Yes, the SS version basically had the Cobalt SS powertrain in
Yeah.
it, and it was quick. But once again, can't see out of it when you're flying down the highway at 130 miles per hour. Bottom line is that this is one of those vehicles that if you can avoid it, I highly recommend you do.
Yeah, there's this moment in time where all the manufacturers were going retro in a kind of a really bad way. Like the new Thunderbird is one of those, right? The PT Loser, as some people will call it. There's just a lot of these kind of cars that stylistically looked old, and it was like it just felt like people were trying to relive their youth in a not helpful way.
Are you trying to say these vehicles are hated?
Yes, by a lot of
Yeah,
people.
which means we're going to end up owning one because
No,
of him.
no, we're not
So
gonna.
please don't buy one.
No.
What's next, dude?
Yeah.
What's
Okay,
number 4?
number 4 on the list is the 2007 to 2012 Dodge Caliber, or as Roman likes to call it, the Calibra.
Oh, does this have BFGs? No.
No, it really doesn't. This is another vehicle I have experience with. This is one of the first vehicles I had to do a write-up for
Yeah,
when I
good.
became a journalist. And it was so hard to write that thing because I tried to find something positive to say about it. I literally could not. It had a terrible powertrain. It had a horrible interior. It was absolutely and positively one of the worst cars built at the time. And here's the thing a lot of you may not know. The platform for this vehicle underpinned the Patriot and the Jeep Compass back then. And also, it is a component that is shared with some Hyundai products as well.
It's so sexy, Nathan.
It is, isn't it? It's
It
just,
just says, you know.
But what about
Come
that
hither.
SRT4?
I drove that. I went to a track event and drove it. And nothing quite like having tons of horsepower. We're talking, I think it was 285 horsepower.
yeah.
And when you turn the wheel and you're still going straight because the wheels are like, ah! Yeah, it was a terrible car to drive. So I do not recommend it unless you can figure out a way of getting it to go straight. Then it's really quick. So yeah, dreadful vehicle, terrible resale, not a great
All
car.
right, we got 6 minutes left, boys.
Oh, yeah.
Any shout-outs there, Mike?
Yeah, we got a bunch of
Yeah.
funny stories about people having Land Rover issues.
Okay, yeah, bring a couple of them out.
We
Let's
feel your pain.
Yeah, we feel your pain.
Ryan Martinage had
Yeah.
the pleasure of being in a Discovery during an air spring blowout while driving with a friend west of Denver.
Yeah.
Awesome experience.
I bet. Ooh.
And then
I'm sorry.
Hey, Alex.
Kopinski, he worked at a car dealership, got a Land Rover in on trade. A salesman could not get out of the vehicle for an hour. The windows stopped working, the doors wouldn't open, the hood latch was stuck, and the battery died.
Wait, so
Wow.
the salesman got locked in because
Locked
the
in.
doors, windows, hood latch all stopped working.
You know, that's not such a bad thing if it's a
I
salesman.
forgot
Right?
about the electronics.
Oh yeah,
they
the
were-
electronic. Well,
I think those were Lucas still on that one.
electronics on
Marcus.
British vehicles are notorious for
Yeah.
being bad.
People are asking, you know, what
Louder.
kind of events are coming up soon. So at the end of the show, let's just talk through what stuff we have kind of in the pipeline.
Yeah, sure, absolutely,
As far as,
absolutely.
like,
We got a couple
shows.
things coming up around the corner.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, let's continue and
Oh.
finish off this list.
We got
okay?
5 minutes, dude.
Yeah,
Really
no
fast.
problem.
Okay, number 3 on the list is actually I'm kind of torn on, but it's the 2004 or 06 through 08 V8. I mean VW Touareg V10 TDI.
Diesel.
Diesel.
Which is a diesel Touareg, which was in its day with a giant V10, had so much torque.
I want to say it had like torque like a heavy duty truck. It was up to like
Yeah,
800 pounds. Or
yeah, it was
something.
crazy
It
torque.
was
your house.
553 pound-feet of torque. I mean, it's just, truck territory. It was really awesome. But then, of course, the repairs, the alternator,
Well, the problem is they put this huge engine into this little tiny space.
Yes.
And so for
There was
instance,
no room to work on anything.
No, so for instance, if the alternator goes, you have to pull the engine, which once again takes a $300 job and makes it into a $3,000 job. I
Right.
mean, it's crazy. So they're uber cool, but they are technically sophisticated. You need special like bays to work on them at Volkswagen.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, special dealerships to go
Dealerships
to.
only can work on
Right.
it. It's just it's a car that I love, but God help you if you own one.
Number 2.
Number 2 is one of my favorite vehicles and one that I'm really sad that's on this list, but it's inevitable. And that is the 2004 to 2008 Mazda RX-8. One of the best handling cars I've ever driven. Very neutral and balanced.
Yeah, pretty much Mazda had a recall on the engine on this one because there was not enough. The thing about
Rotary engine,
Yeah,
for those
the
of
thing
you.
about the
Right.
rotary engine is it needs to have oil injected into it. That's why there are no more rotaries because they pollute because they basically have to have oil to.
It eats oil.
Yeah, to lubricate the apex seals. And in this engine, there was not enough oil injection into it, so it would basically fail.
Yeah,
Before 100,000 miles, the engine would go out on you.
Yeah, you can replace the apex seals, but that's not cheap.
Replace the engine.
You literally have to pull the engine out. You might as well just replace it at that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, unfortunately, and that was one of the many reasons why you're not seeing rotaries today. Although rumor has it they are bringing back a rotary.
They're cheap. You can get one for like $4K.
Yeah, as long as somebody's taking care of it.
Or if you found one with a replaced engine.
Yes.
Also, not very easy to get in and out of this car for
Not-
tall people.
No, it's not. For Roman, he has to cut his hair short just to get in. What's cool though is that you are able to put like kids in the back seat or golf clubs, so that's pretty cool. And once again, great handling car, not a lot of power. Let's move on to number 1. Andre, go for it.
Number 1 is just 1 year of this vehicle, 2013 Nissan Pathfinder with a CVT transmission.
That's going to be a theme from now on for the next two.
Yeah, so CVT, not great, and there was actually a lawsuit that has to do with some of the failures.
Class
Yeah, it was a
action
class
lawsuit.
action lawsuit. A lot of people went in on this.
And I think Nissan did something also interesting because, right, they had, body and frame and then unibody. Body and frame, and this was the next iteration of the unibody vehicle for the Pathfinder, and it has a cool off-roady name.
Yeah.
Pathfinder, but it turned into
But not
this.
such a cool nickname, right? Hey, what's the nickname? What's this vehicle's nickname?
Well-
Give me a shout out. Don't say it.
I didn't.
I'm asking for a shout out. What's the nickname? Anybody get there, Mike?
While you guys are looking
Well,
for the nickname,
let's keep going.
Just understand that one of the issues with this vehicle in terms of off-roading is the fact that it really is an all-wheel drive wagon. And I mean, can we agree on that? And then on top of that, not a lot of ground clearance, not a very good breakover angle. Bottom line is that they made a very nice family hauler that off-road didn't do what the old Pathfinder did. I know that because I own a Pathfinder, and I absolutely love it because it can go
But not
off-road.
this gen.
Hell no. No, I have the previous generation, which was basically a truck, and it had actually about the same amount of horsepower, almost the same amount of torque,
We got 2 minutes, dude.
but they're very different. Well, I thought you were waiting for somebody
No.
to say
What's
them
the
all.
bonus?
Oh, the bonus. Nathan, say the bonus.
The bonus is the mini hatch. Just
With
the
the
mini.
CVT.
Mini Cooper.
With the CVT.
With the CVT, and yes, they did have a CVT. And it was 100% bad.
Yeah, the failure rate on the CVT was 100% on these. Pretty much they all failed. And so if you got, well, it's not the first generation. It's the first generation of the BMW.
Of the new
Mini.
Mini,
Of the
yeah.
BMW. And if you got the one with the not the Cooper, but the one with the CVT base model, it failed.
Yep, it did.
We have a shout out.
What's
Give it a
up?
shout
Okay,
out.
we got some guesses here.
Yeah, what is it?
So we have the baby Murano. I don't think
No,
No,
that's not it. No.
sorry.
The trash can. The
No.
path grinder.
No.
That's pretty good, though. I like that.
The shop finder.
Close.
Close.
Oh!
That's it right now.
Oh,
Okay,
should we
sure.
tell them
Yeah,
that?
yeah. The mall finder is what they're calling it.
Yeah.
You can find them all.
It can find them all, and it can venture through those parking
All right,
lots.
we have 1 minute, boys.
Okay, so 1 minute left, and we're
Picture
going
of the
to
day?
picture of the day. Let's fire it up.
All right,
Yeah,
so
and time to give away one of these hats.
So people who can guess this correctly and email us at info@tflcar.com will get one of these hats.
This is what we're playing for. We have a Chevy hat, we have a Titan hat, we have a Honda hat. Oh, it's all black. We have a Jeep hat,
Yes, sir.
and we have a Mazda hat. So let us
One
know,
of these.
Let us know your guess.
Yeah,
let us know
let
which
us
one
know.
which one of these you want. And the first person, once again, to email us at
Info at
TFLcar.com.
Yeah, we'll get this, and it doesn't do any good if you put in the comments you won't win the hat, but
Yeah.
you will get credit for it. Well, guys, thank you for joining us.
any final comments? Should
Yeah,
we-
wait, you know what's cool about this, guys?
What?
So,
What?
you know how a lot of cars have pop-up headlights?
Yeah.
Yes.
This car has pop-down headlights.
Yeah, there's a component that goes down.
Look
There it
at
is.
this.
Hey.
But 5 headlights.
Yes.
Well, it's better than 4.
All right, well, guys, thanks for joining us for this beta version
Yes.
of TFL Now Live. We're going to do it every day except for Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, which is, of course, 11 o'clock Central, noon for all Eastern folks, 9 o'clock on the California coast.
Yep.
And tomorrow we're coming back with Ask Mr. Truck episode. We're going to have
It's
Kent
going to be
here.
a trucky show tomorrow.
Trucky
Very
time.
trucky.
Yeah, so bring your questions, all your towing question, axle ratio questions.
We're going to be here for a while.
He loves questions about his boots, by the way, just so you know.
So we're going to be answering all of your questions on how to tow, on how to set up towing rigs, and we're just going to have fun. So keep in mind that if you're watching this live, you've gotten the chance to interact with us.